He said it loud enough for the whole restaurant to hear. "I'm the new partner now." I remember the exact second the fork froze halfway to my mouth. The clink of glasses, the low jazz humming from the speakers, the way everyone at the table turned to him like he'd just announced a pregnancy or a promotion that mattered. My brother leaned back in his chair, smug, confident, wearing that same crooked grin he'd practiced since we were kids, the one that always said he'd landed on his feet no matter whose neck he stepped on. My mom gasped, delighted. "A partner? Already? That's incredible." Dad slapped the table. "I told you he'd go places." No one looked at me. I swallowed slowly, set my fork down, and folded my napkin with shaking fingers. I'd been working with that company for 8 years. 8! I'd started as an assistant when they still shared an office with a dentist upstairs and the air smelled like bleach and burnt coffee. I'd stayed late, learned contracts, handled vendors, fixed crises no one else wanted to touch. I knew the books better than the CFO. I knew which clients were loyal and which ones were one bad quarter away from bolting. And now, my brother, who'd been there all of 9 months, was announcing he was a partner. He caught my eye and smirked. "Guess hard work pays off, huh?" I forced a smile that felt like glass cutting into my cheeks. "Congratulations." Inside, something cold and precise snapped into place. The rest of the dinner passed in a blur. Everyone asked him questions. How did it happen? Was it equity or profit sharing? Did it come with a corner office? He soaked it all in, exaggerating just enough to sound impressive without knowing what he was talking about. I listened. I always listened. On the drive home, my phone buzzed. A message from Mark, the CEO. "We need to talk tomorrow, early." I stared at the screen, my pulse thudding in my ears. The next morning, I walked into the office before sunrise. The city outside was still half asleep, streets wet from overnight rain, lights blinking like tired eyes. I brewed coffee, sat at my desk, and opened the company's financial dashboard, the one I'd quietly been given access to years ago because you're the only one we trust with this. By 7:12 a.m., I knew exactly what my brother didn't. The company wasn't offering partnerships. They were looking for an exit. Mark arrived at 7:30, tie already loosened, eyes rimmed red. He shut the door behind him and exhaled like a man carrying too much weight. "You heard about your brother," he said. "I did." He rubbed his temples. "That announcement was premature." I raised an eyebrow. "So he's not a partner?" "Not yet. Not really." He hesitated. "We were planning to sell, quietly. Majority stake. I was hoping you might be interested." The room went very still. "Me?" I asked. "You've basically been running this place," he said softly. "You know that." I thought of all the times my brother had laughed when I worked late, all the holidays I skipped, all the family dinners where I was just the sister with the boring job. I leaned back in my chair. "What's the number?" He told me. I didn't flinch. I'd been preparing for this moment without even realizing it. Quiet investments, a trust fund my grandmother left me that no one ever talked about, a line of credit approved months ago for a future opportunity. Mark watched my face carefully. "You don't have to answer now." "I do, but not out loud." That afternoon, my brother strutted through the office like he already owned the place. He stopped by my desk, tapped the edge with his knuckles. "Better get used to calling me boss," he joked. I looked up at him, calm. "You should read the fine print." He laughed. "You were always dramatic." That night, I met with my lawyer. The next morning, the papers were ready, but I didn't say a word. I let my brother keep bragging, let him tell our parents about his company, let him plan renovations to an office he didn't know was about to change hands. On Friday, Mark called an all-hands meeting. My brother winked at me as we walked in. I took a seat near the front, hands folded, heart steady. Mark cleared his throat. "I'd like to introduce the new majority owner of the company." Every head turned. I stood up, and before anyone could process what was happening, the conference room doors opened and my brother's smile finally started to slip. The doors didn't just open quietly. They swung wide, slow, deliberate, like the room itself wanted time to absorb what was coming. My brother turned in his chair, grin still half there, half confused. "Who's that?" he whispered, like this was some awkward scheduling mistake. I didn't answer. Two men walked in first. Dark suits, tablets tucked under their arms, faces neutral in that way people get when they're feared to witness something important but not feel it. Behind them was my lawyer, and behind her, Mark stepped aside a little, giving me the clearest line of sight in the room. Every eye snapped back to me. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat, but my voice, when I finally spoke, came out steady. Too steady. "Morning." My brother laughed, sharp and nervous. "What is this, some kind of joke?" Mark didn't smile. "No." Silence crashed down, heavy enough to make the air feel thick. Someone near the back shifted in their chair. I heard a pen drop. My brother stood up. "Okay, seriously, what's going on?" I stayed standing. My lawyer placed a folder on the conference table, sliding it forward just enough that the edge brushed his fingertips. "Those are ownership documents," she said calmly. He frowned, didn't touch them. "Why would I need those?" She looked at me. I nodded once. "You might want to read." His laugh came out wrong this time, too loud. "This is about me being partner, right? Because Mark already—" "Didn't make you a partner," Mark interrupted, voice tight. "What?" Mark took a breath. "The company was put up for sale." A ripple moved through the room, soft gasps, whispers. My brother looked around like someone might back him up. No one did. He turned back to me, eyes narrowing. "You knew this?" "Yes." "How long?" "Long enough." His gaze dropped to the folder. Slowly, like it might bite him, he opened it. I watched his eyes move across the page, his mouth part slightly, the color draining from his face. "This says—" He looked up at me, disbelief cracking his voice. "This says you—" I acquired the majority stake, pending final signatures. The word pending hung there, electric. He shook his head, laughing again, but this time it was brittle. "You're lying. You can't afford this." I tilted my head. "You don't actually know what I can afford." He took a step toward me. "You did this behind my back." I met his stare. "You announced a partnership that didn't exist, in front of our parents, in public. That's different." "Is it?" Mark cleared his throat. "Until everything is finalized, operations remain the same, but effective immediately, decision-making authority goes to her," my lawyer finished. My brother spun toward Mark. "You're siding with her?" Mark didn't hesitate. "I'm siding with the future of the company." That's when my brother looked at me the way he used to when we were kids, when he realized he might actually lose. "You planned this," he said quietly. I didn't deny it. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You think this makes you better than me?" "I think it makes things different." His phone buzzed. He ignored it. Then it buzzed again, and again. Across the room, I felt my own phone vibrate in my pocket at the exact same time. I didn't look at it yet, neither did he, but something told me whoever was calling was about to make this a lot messier. The buzzing didn't stop. It crawled under my skin, that vibration in my pocket like a warning I wasn't ready to read yet. My brother finally snapped and yanked his phone out, glancing at the screen. Whatever he saw made his jaw tighten. "Who is it?" I asked, keeping my voice level. He didn't answer. He turned away from me, stepping toward the window, lowering his voice. "Now's not a good time," he hissed into the phone. Then, after a pause, "No, I didn't know she'd do this." She. The room felt smaller suddenly. The suits near the wall exchanged a look. Mark's fingers drummed once against the table and stopped. My phone buzzed again. I pulled it out this time. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. "Hello?" A woman's voice came through, calm but sharp, like she'd rehearsed this moment. "Is this the majority stakeholder of record?" Every head in the room turned toward me. "Yes," I said slowly. "This is Elaine Carter. I represent a minority group with interests tied to your acquisition. We need to speak immediately, privately." My brother's head snapped around. I felt the blood drain from my face. About what? I asked. There was a brief pause. About the documents your brother signed last quarter. I looked straight at him. His eyes were wide now, panic flickering just beneath the surface. He signed nothing, I said. Another pause, longer this time. Then someone forged his signature, she replied, because those papers exist. The room erupted into overlapping voices, but they sounded far away to me, like I was underwater. My brother rushed toward me, lowering his voice. You don't understand, he said fast. I was trying to protect us. From what? I demanded. Before he could answer, Mark raised his hand. Everyone, please, let's take 5 minutes. No one moved. My lawyer leaned in close to me, her voice barely above a whisper. If there are forged documents tied to this acquisition, it could stall everything. Or undo it, I murmured. Across the room, my brother was breathing hard, like a cornered animal. You can't fire me, he said, suddenly, louder now. Not yet. I met his gaze. Why not? He swallowed. Because if I go down, I'm not going alone. The doors behind us creaked slightly, as if someone were just about to walk in. And for the first time since this meeting began, I wasn't sure which side of that door I wanted them to be on. The door didn't open. It just waited. That sound, the faint creak, hung in the air like a held breath. Everyone stared at it, then at me, as if I was supposed to give permission for whatever came next. My brother's fingers drummed once against the table and stopped. My phone buzzed again. I pulled it out this time. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Hello? A woman's voice came through, calm but sharp, like she'd rehearsed this moment. Is this the majority stakeholder of record? Every head in the room turned toward me. Yes, I said slowly. This is Elaine Carter. I represent a minority group with interests tied to your acquisition. We need to speak immediately, privately. My brother's head snapped around. I felt the blood drain from my face. About what? I asked. There was a brief pause. About the documents your brother signed last quarter. I looked straight at him. His eyes were wide now, panic flickering just beneath the surface. He signed nothing, I said. Another pause, longer this time. Then someone forged his signature, she replied, because those papers exist. The room erupted into overlapping voices, but they sounded far away to me, like I was underwater. My brother rushed toward me, lowering his voice. You don't understand, he said fast. I was trying to protect us. From what? I demanded. Before he could answer, Mark raised his hand. Everyone, please, let's take 5 minutes. No one moved. My lawyer leaned in close to me, her voice barely above a whisper. If there are forged documents tied to this acquisition, it could stall everything. Or undo it, I murmured. Across the room, my brother was breathing hard, like a cornered animal. You can't fire me, he said, suddenly, louder now. Not yet. I met his gaze. Why not? He swallowed. Because if I go down, I'm not going alone. The doors behind us creaked slightly, as if someone were just about to walk in. And for the first time since this meeting began, I wasn't sure which side of that door I wanted them to be on. The door swung open slowly, like it knew it was carrying bad news. Elaine Carter stepped in first, immaculate suit, tablet tucked under her arm, eyes sharp enough to slice glass. Behind her were 2 men I didn't recognize at first. Older, controlled, expensive-looking in that quiet way that screamed money without begging for attention. One of them glanced at my brother and didn't bother hiding the contempt. That's him, the man said flatly, the one who signed. My brother stood up so fast, his chair screeched backward. You said this was handled, he snapped at Elaine. You said, I said it was contained, Elaine cut in, cool as ice. Contained doesn't mean buried, especially not anymore. Every head in the room turned to me. Elaine finally looked at me, really looked at me, and her tone shifted just enough to feel dangerous. You need to understand something, she said. The moment your name replaced his on the ownership filings, certain people started asking questions they'd been avoiding for years. One of the men stepped forward. Your father approached us 8 years ago, he said. Promised returns, promised silence. When the numbers stopped adding up, your brother became the point of contact. I felt like the floor tilted. My father's been dead for 3 years, I said. Yes, which complicates things. My brother rubbed his face, hands shaking now. I didn't have a choice, he said, almost pleading. They told me if I didn't, they'd call the loans immediately. The company would have collapsed. Everyone would have lost their jobs. And instead, I said quietly, you let everyone believe you earned your promotion. He didn't deny it. Elaine set her tablet on the table and slid it toward me. She said there's more. Your acquisition triggered a clause, one your father assumed would never be activated. I stared at the screen but didn't touch it. Say it. She hesitated. That scared me more than anything else. If investigators determine the company was used to conceal personal debt, she said carefully, ownership can be challenged, temporarily, until liability is assigned. To who? I asked. Elaine met my eyes. That depends on intent and knowledge. The room felt too small, too quiet. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. So what are you saying? I asked. That buying the company might make me responsible for debts I didn't know existed? One of the men gave a thin smile. Ignorance is a gray area, especially in family businesses. My brother finally looked like he was breaking. I tried to tell you, he whispered. I didn't think it would blow up like this. I stood up. Every instinct told me to run, to scream, to rewind time to before I'd ever decided to prove a point, but instead I placed both hands on the table and leaned forward. Let's be very clear, I said. The words surprised even me. I didn't inherit this mess. I didn't create it, and I didn't consent to being used as a shield. Elaine nodded slightly, like she'd been waiting for that exact sentence. There is one option left, but it requires cooperation, full transparency, and, she glanced at my brother, someone being willing to take responsibility. My brother swallowed hard. What kind of responsibility? He asked. Elaine didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked at me and said, before we proceed, there's something else you need to see. She tapped her tablet again. A familiar name appeared on the screen, and the second I read it, I knew this wasn't just about the company anymore. My throat tightened the second I saw the name. It was my grandmother's name, not as a footnote, not as history, right there, active, current. That's not possible, I said, my voice coming out thinner than I wanted. Elaine didn't look surprised by my reaction. Legally, parts of her estate never were. The men behind her shifted, suddenly very interested in the floor. My brother let out a shaky laugh that sounded like it scraped his lungs on the way out. You dragged her into this? He snapped. She had nothing to do with— Wrong, Elaine said sharply. She had everything to do with it. She was the firewall. I stared at the screen, my vision blurring just enough to make the letters swim. My grandmother, the woman who used to slip me cash and birthday cards even when my parents said I didn't deserve it. The woman who whispered, "Don't let them tell you who you are," when she thought no one else was listening. She set up a contingency trust, silent, dormant, designed to activate only if certain assets were threatened by internal misuse. Internal misuse, I repeated. My brother backed away from the table like it had burned him. She hated me, he said weakly. She always favored you. That's not true, I said automatically. Then I stopped. Because maybe it was. Or maybe she just saw things the rest of us didn't want to see. One of the men finally spoke again. When your father began leveraging the company against personal debt, she intervened, quietly. She transferred risk, placed oversight mechanisms. On me? I asked. To the next legitimate owner, he said, which turned out to be you. My stomach dropped. So let me get this straight, I said, forcing each word out slowly. My father buried debt, my brother tried to hold it together by lying, and my grandmother planned for me to clean it up without even telling me? Elaine's expression softened for the first time. Not clean it up, she said. Control it. Silence slammed into the room.
My brother shook his head over and over. No, no, this is insane. You can't just rewrite everything because of some secret letter or trust. Elaine turned the tablet toward him. It's not a letter, it's a trigger. My phone buzzed again in my hand. This time, it wasn't unknown. It was my mother. I stared at the screen, my chest tightening. She hadn't called me in months, not since the day she told me I was embarrassing the family by playing CEO. I answered before I could talk myself out of it. What? Her voice was breathless, panicked. Why are people calling me? What did you do? I almost laughed. Almost. What I did, I said quietly, is finally show up. She didn't respond. I could hear muffled voices on her end, someone asking questions she clearly didn't want to answer. Elaine leaned closer to me. Once this moves forward, she murmured, there's no undoing it. Your brother will be questioned, your parents' finances will be examined, and your grandmother's trust will decide who this all falls on, I finished. She nodded. Across the room, my brother's face had gone pale. You wouldn't, he said, locking eyes with me. You wouldn't let them tear this family apart. Family. The word hung between us like a dare. I looked at him, really looked at him, and wondered exactly when he'd stopped seeing me as one. Before I could answer, one of the men cleared his throat. There's been a development, he said, checking his phone. The auditors are on their way. They want statements. Elaine straightened. Then we're out of time. She looked at me. What happens next depends entirely on what you say when they walk through that door. The hallway outside echoed with approaching footsteps, and for the first time, I realized the power I'd fought so hard to claim was about to test whether I could survive holding it.
The footsteps stopped right outside the door. I felt it in my chest before I heard the knock. 3 firm taps. Not asking permission, just announcing reality. My brother swallowed hard. I saw his jaw tighten the way it used to when we were kids, and he knew he'd gone too far, but still hoped someone else would take the blame. Open it, Elaine said quietly. No one moved. So I did. The door swung inward and 2 auditors stepped in, dark suits, neutral faces, carrying that calm authority of people who already know more than they're going to admit. One of them glanced at me, then at my brother, then at Elaine. Ms. Carter, the taller one said, nodding toward me, we'll need a private statement from you first. My brother stepped forward immediately. She doesn't speak for the company, he said, too fast. I do. The auditor didn't even look at him. That's under review. Under review. Those words landed harder than any insult. My phone buzzed again, still in my hand, another text from my mother. Please don't do this. Think about your father. I didn't reply. Elaine leaned close enough that only I could hear her. Once you speak, she whispered, the narrative locks. Choose carefully. I nodded. Even though my heart was pounding so hard, I was sure everyone could hear it. They led me into the smaller conference room next door. Glass walls, no privacy, just the illusion of it. I could see my brother through the glass, pacing now, running his hands through his hair. For the first time, he looked small. The auditor closed the door behind us. We'll start simple, he said, setting his recorder on the table. When did you first become aware of discrepancies in the company's financial structure? I opened my mouth. And then I stopped, because through the glass, I saw my brother's phone light up. I saw him read something, and then I saw his face change. Not panic this time, but calculation. He looked straight at me and smiled, a slow, knowing smile. My stomach twisted. What is it? The auditor asked. I shook my head. Nothing. But I knew that smile. It was the same one he'd worn every time he thought he'd outsmarted someone, every time he believed he had leverage. And suddenly, I was sure of one thing. He wasn't done yet, and whatever move he was about to make, it was aimed directly at me. The room felt too quiet after that smile. The auditor waited, pen hovering, but I was already standing. My legs moved before my fear could catch up. I opened the glass door and stepped back into the main conference room. Everyone turned toward me at once. Elaine, the auditors, my brother, the board members who'd been pretending this was just another Monday.
My brother spoke first, loud, confident, desperate. "Before anyone says anything," he said, holding his phone, "I think you should all know my sister's been planning this for months. Secret meetings, offshore accounts, she wants control." A few heads tilted, doubt flickered. He saw it and pressed harder. "She's always been jealous," he added, eyes locked on me. "This is just revenge." I didn't rush. I walked to the end of the table and placed my own phone down, screen facing up. Elaine tapped it once, projecting the screen to the wall behind us. "Purchase agreement, majority shares, effective date 3 weeks ago." A murmur rolled through the room. I looked at my brother then, really looked at him. The boy who used to take credit for my ideas, the man who'd stepped on every rung of the ladder and called it ambition. "I didn't plan revenge," I said, my voice steady, surprising even me. "I planned survival." The taller auditor cleared his throat. "For the record, Miss Carter is listed as the controlling shareholder." Silence. My brother laughed once, sharp and hollow. "That's not funny." "It's not a joke," Elaine said. He turned to her. "You knew?" She didn't answer. His eyes came back to me, wide now. "You can't do this." I finally let myself feel it. The years of being dismissed, the meetings I wasn't invited to, the credit that never came. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I already did. I slid a single document across the table toward him. Termination letter, cause listed, effective immediately. His hands shook as he read it. "You're firing me," he whispered. I nodded once. "Security will walk you out." For a moment, I thought he might yell, cry, beg. Instead, he dropped the paper like it burned and walked toward the door without looking back. When it closed behind him, the room exhaled. The auditor turned off his recorder. Elaine met my eyes and smiled, just slightly. Outside, through the glass, I watched my brother disappear down the hallway he once owned, and for the first time in my life, the company felt quiet. Not empty, just finally mine.